For a long time, Chinese manufacturing was believed to be of a very low quality. But recently, I posted a video some time ago talking about how Chinese manufacturing has managed to raise the quality of some watches. And today we have proof of this. This is a watch from a brand called Baltic. It is a French brand that has taken the watchmaking world by kind of a surprise. They are offering very good quality watches with very nice designs at extremely acceptable prices. Of course, I'm referring to mechanical chronographs, diving watches, but especially this model that I have here. And maybe at first glance it doesn't look so spectacular, but as I've always said, the most impressive thing about most watches comes when you turn it over and see the back. And of course, here we see that we have a beautiful machine with a micro-rotor. Now, I really want you to know that the micro-rotor is a feature that until recently was only available for a few people that were willing to pay a large sum of money. The only brands that use micro-rotors are very prestigious brands such as Patek Philippe, Piaget, Bulgari, and some others. Obviously, I don't need to explain it to you, but all of these brands are extremely expensive. So finding a watch with such a beautiful movement and a micro-rotor for $700 becomes quite curious. Obviously, this is achieved thanks to Chinese manufacturing, which when the patents of the original Swiss movements expire, they have the freedom to recreate the architecture of this movement. Because the materials are not of the highest quality, the tolerances are not as tight, and the quality control is a bit lower. And of course the finishing is obviously not the same. But I think it gives you the opportunity to have that feeling of what it would be like to have a watch with many more zeros in its price. But where does the micro-rotor come from and why is it so important? Now, if you know watches, which you probably do because you're watching this video, surely you will recognize the brand Universal Genève, which is a historical brand, especially in terms of vintage watches, because they had many innovations in the world of watches. Now, in the 1950s, they developed the micro-rotor. Now, we all know that an automatic movement works with the movement of your wrist, and it has a rotor that is the one that, with the movement, turns around and winds the spring that powers the watch. Basically, this is how an automatic watch works. But in those times, there were two problems. One, the rotor had to be very large and heavy to be able to turn and charge the mechanism. And number two, it took up a lot of space inside of the watch, which made the automatic watches to be much thicker. So the Universal Genève brand, along with Marcel Debras, a watchmaker, developed something new. They needed their watches to be much thinner, much more compact. So they developed the micro-rotor, which number one, it gave you a window to enjoy the finishing of the movement because you had a broader view of the entire mechanism. And number two, it allowed you to have much thinner watches because the automatic rotor no longer needed a module on its own because it was embedded into the movement. Now, obviously, they encountered the problem that the micro-rotor had to be much heavier than usual, otherwise it would not be able to turn and wind the watch. And that's why many of them were made of 24 karat gold. Well, now, I've gone off track a bit, but basically, this is the history of micro-rotors. And as I said, it was something very exclusive in watches of very high quality. But I think Baltic as a brand has positioned itself very well because it clearly has a very European, very French design. You can see the quality in the design, and almost all of the watches have a vintage inspiration, which is somewhat fashionable, but they knew how to take advantage of Chinese manufacturing to offer something a little bit more exclusive. Because, as I have said before, they could have used a Seiko movement or an ETA movement, but I feel that, as I said, those movements have already become the norm. everyone uses those movements, and they are not as eye-catching, they are not so decorating, and they are a good option, but I think they took the correct risk. Now, I'm going to leave the specifications of the watch here, but overall I think it is a very comfortable, very versatile, and very elegant watch. The finishes are quite good, and the granulated dial, I really like it. I feel it gives an extra touch of quality. And if we add the Breguet style numerals and the well finished hands, I believe that in general, if you put a good strap on the watch, which I'm not saying that the one that comes with is bad, but in this case maybe a deluxe strap of a very good quality completely elevates the watch and makes it feel like it belongs on a different level. One thing I would change about the watch, without a doubt, would be the crystal. Now, I understand that they are watches inspired by vintage past pieces, and that is why they come with a plexiglass crystal. But personally, I would have gone with a sapphire top hat or sapphire domed crystal. I think it would have done this watch a favor. And I think we generally have in mind that something exclusive has to be expensive. But I believe that with this Baltic watch, it shows us that we can have something that feels exclusive, but that we don't actually have to pay so much money for it. So I believe that Chinese manufacturing is actually helping the watch industry grow. But tell me, what do you think? And remember guys that more than 90% of you are not subscribed, so if you like talking about watches, if you like talking about the market, click the subscribe button, activate the bell, and I'll see you next time.